Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So, number one, That Fandom Show. Joining me tonight and every other Monday night, he's the voice. Zach, the voice. What's going on, man?
Hey, dude. I'm really stoked to be here with you tonight and everybody that's in the chat. We got a really great turnout to kick off this week, and we've got some really big stuff that dropped over the weekend, and we've got that to talk about, along with a galaxy far away and a neighborhood called Haddonfield that's a lot closer, and it's all on the docket tonight, and I'm excited for it.
Yeah, so That Fandom Show was already going to be taking place, regardless of the news today. And I finished my morning shift at work, and I got home, and I wasn't home for very long. And Zach here links me to a bloody disgusting article, which I probably should have had ready, but we will get to in just a bit. So let me just start off by saying welcome. Hopefully everybody's having a great Monday night. I obviously don't sound myself. Still very much getting over whatever the hell this cold flu bug was. I saw someone in the chat wish my family well. They're definitely in the thick of it still. The kids are struggling, and Mama Bear's taking care of them right now. So some really quickly off the top, some changes that are going to be happening around the channel is we're scaling back on Flixbusters, simply because of scheduling and having a hard time, not so much being able to get on and do the show, but having time to watch all the movies. I was pretty set on wanting to watch, whether it's a new movie or an old movie, prior to doing a show. And Zach's a super busy guy. I'm sure he will tell you a bit about that tonight. And honestly, we've just been on the mend over here for a while. It's been hell, and I actually can't hear out of this ear at all right now. I have music blaring in my ears, nothing. So hopefully that comes undone in time. But starting tonight, Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays at 9 p.m. Eastern, you'll be able to get That Fandom Show right here on Fandom Empire. And we're going to have a revolving door of co-hosts. So you'll, most of the time, get me regardless, I know, to your great displeasure. But every other Monday, Zach's going to be here. And when Zach is not here, Ryan will be here, which is basically your Legacy of Westeros crew. So on Tuesdays, it's going to be Randy. On Wednesdays, some Wednesdays will be Matt, and other Wednesdays will be someone I can't announce yet. And Tommy's going to do some Thursdays. So it's just so hard scheduling to get everybody on at once. And as fun as the roundtable shows are, it's a lot to try to get everybody in the same spot at the same time with everything that's going on. Life is busy. That's life. But basically what this show will be is it'll be an hour show every night, or 4 nights a week, and you'll be able to come on here and share your thoughts. The number one way you can support Fandom Empire is still, if you actually just click on the like button. If you haven't done that yet, click the like button, subscribe, / the notification bell. It's absolutely free to do so. Helps the channel out a lot. It would be greatly appreciated. But if you want to support the channel on another level, you can head on over to patreon.com/Fandom Empire. So yeah, you can do that. Big shout out to the sponsors who make this possible too: Backtrack Cinema, Storytime Spectacular, and Colleague Nation. Question right off the top before we get to anything: do you want a new Halloween movie or a TV series? If you could only have one, and we're going to talk about that here soon, but if you could only have one, what are you picking? A movie or a TV series? Let us know in the chat, or in the comment section down below. Zach, it appears to have finally happened, man. Sounds like the WGA strike has come to an end. Tentatively, obviously. Still needs to be ratified. There's still steps to happen before everything goes fully in motion, but we're still missing a lot of the details. There's very little out there right now. Just your thoughts on a 146-day strike coming to an end, and a lot of projects basically getting out of purgatory here and allowing to continue their pre-production anyways. Like, anybody who thinks Bloody Disgusting just came up with this article today, no, they didn't. They've been holding on to it. If we reported this very thing in February or March, and Bloody Disgusting is way bigger than we are, they've been holding on to it for quite a while. And you're going to see a lot of things like that in the days to come. But your thoughts, man, on the strike potentially ending and what it means for just everything moving forward?
I mean, dude, it means a lot for media and for the industry. It means that people can return to work. It means that people can talk about their projects again. It means that people can report on their projects again. It's going to revolutionize or revitalize everything about the industry. You know, all we've been able to do is kind of retrospectives, talk about things like the Titanic, like we did on Flixbusters, because yeah, it was relevant because of the submersible thing, but it was also because we didn't really have anything new to talk about. You know, if you take a look at your local cinemas and see what's playing, like, there's not a whole lot to get excited for, if I'm being honest. And so the opportunities that are there and the things that we can start getting excited about again, maybe some of those things that got pushed back are going to have adjusted schedules now that they can actually set a timeline for when things are expected to come back. It just means a lot. It means a lot for this industry. And you're right. I'm sure Bloody Disgusting has been sitting on a lot of stuff, and it's going to be a periodic, gradual progression of stuff getting announced and released. I would say this info about the Halloween franchise is right up there with the rumor that's floating around that The Office is going to get rebooted. You know, those are two of the biggest things that have come out since the email was sent out last evening. You know, we're recording this on the 25th, and there was an email that was sent to members of the Writers Guild, and I'll just read you the opening paragraph. It says, "Dear members, we have reached a tentative agreement on a new 2023 MBA, which is to say an agreement in principle on all deals subject to drafting final contract language." So, as I understand it, the way it's going to work is the guild members have been meeting with the studios, and they have been negotiating for the things that they want for their people. But the wording of it still has to be ratified by the guild themselves. There's going to be a draft of the document that's going to get sent to basically every WGA member, and they have to approve it. It has to be ratified and signed and all that sort of stuff. And so there's still several steps in the process to get all of this done and get it worded out. I mean, hell, America's Declaration of Independence wasn't actually finished on July 4th, 1776. I believe it was read before Congress on the 1st or the 2nd, and then it was read before them on the 4th, but I don't think it got all the way finished, signed, and distributed until like the 6th. So there was like several days that were involved in this, and I'm not saying that the WGA is signing their Declaration of Independence, but as far as marking this as like the actual historical day that things are taking shape, it may be a little premature for that, because yes, it's a big step, and yes, a lot of stuff is getting announced, but I think there's still a long ways to go too.
I did read that during the ratification process, there's going to be certain things that are allowed to happen. Not everything, but certain things that are allowed to happen to get the wheels in motion. Like, I think a lot of people just think that, oh, okay, you know, it's over and we're right back into the thick of it. But no, it's going to be a buildup. You know, there's so many things right now that are in pre-production. Take Camp Crystal Lake, for example, A24 Friday the 13th series that was deep in pre-production with Brian Fuller. But it's not like tomorrow Brian and everybody's going to be right back to where they were when the strike started. This is going to be a maybe not a slow, but it's going to be a gradual process to get back to where they need to be. So there are going to be certain things that are allowed, and then once the ratification happens, everything will be go. At least from a writer's standpoint, there's still an actor strike going on too. Obviously, I don't want to take attention from the writers, but is there anything that really stands out to you, man, from the writer's side of things, and how, do you think that this is really going to be a significant change and step in the right direction? Because I got to tell you, the whole studios leaning into the whole AI thing was really rubbing me the wrong way.
I mean, it's been rubbing a lot of people the wrong way. If you take a look at any social media platform, everybody's talking about how against it they are. It's only the people in power and the people with money that are really saying that this is what they want. Everybody that's a common man that's a part of the industry has been saying no. And even people who aren't part of the industry are recognizing the hypocrisy of it. And so I don't see this as a long-term fix. In fact, I'm pretty sure I read somewhere that this is only a 3-year deal. And so when you're talking about when you're talking about long-term fixes, no, I don't think this is anywhere near a long-term fix, because even once this gets approved and signed and ratified and implemented and all that stuff, we could be looking at the exact same problem all over again in 2026. This is not a long-term fix by any means. It's a step in the right direction, but I really think that this is more of a placeholder until they can go behind the scenes and continue to negotiate to extend that contract beyond 2026. This is a like a Band-Aid on a Monty Python flesh wound, and it's not going to be fixed until we hear about a 8 to 10 year deal. 3 years is going to go by super quick.
Well, I mean, for example, like we're going to talk about Star Wars later in the program. It's the last thing we're getting to tonight. Mm-hmm. And they have various movies that they're working through right now, but there's obviously 3 that they're focused on, and none of them are coming out within 3 years. Actually, one might be out within 3 years. And even then, it's like, you go move to the second one, or if there's a delay, like that strike hits again, and if they're still filming at that point, guess what? You're right back to square one. Yep. Like Zach's right. Yep. Everybody's saying the right things to avoid another blow up and having someone leave the table, and but at the same time, 3 years in Hollywood is absolutely nothing. It took them 5 years to make the Batman from point A to finish. That's not release. That's 5 years from the time they started to the time they finished post-production.
I mean, I'll take even further than that. It took the entire duration of the CW's Flash TV series to make Ezra Miller's Flash movie. It took them, 9 seasons, like 7 or 8 years to announce the movie and then actually release it. Grant Gustin made and cemented his legacy as the Flash before Miller even took the screen. So yeah, it takes forever to get something like this done, and 3 years is a drop in the bucket for Hollywood.
No, it really is, and it's a Band-Aid. There are productions or big movies that are in the works as we speak that won't be ready in 3 years, that this is like, okay, well, we can continue, but if we don't get a longer term deal here, we're going to be facing something else. And
right. And that's why I believe that they're negotiating a 3-year contract so that production on things that were already planned and scheduled can resume, and the powers that be can meet behind the scenes while all of these productions are going on. I don't think that the negotiations are ending. I think this is a first step of many. And once that 3-year contract is signed, I'm thinking of it in like football terms. You've got your Patrick Mahomes that you want for a lifetime deal, but you really need to like have a shorter contract put in place until you can fix and renegotiate and create an extended program once all of your budgetary items are in place, once all your details and ducks are in a row. This is that stopgap contract before you can sign the Supermax deal. And for people who are saying that they've won, maybe you've won the battle, but the war is definitely going to be going on behind the scenes while feature films like Deadpool 3 are going to get made, while maybe a Star Wars feature is going to get made. Some of the TV shows are going to resume production and things like that. Yeah, those things are going to return you to quote unquote normal as a consumer of media. But as far as the way things are shaping up in Hollywood, the next 3 years are going to be critical. And if they don't get sorted out behind the scenes, we could be right back where we started in 2026.
I'll tell you one thing I think you're going to see is during this time, another product that Zach and I cover, Game of Thrones, Westeros, House of the Dragon, they haven't stopped. They've kept going. They're almost done filming their season 2. And I do think you're going to see bigger productions go the way that they've gone in terms of getting people outside of certain North American unions and moving their productions over there to avoid things like this. And, some people might be like, well, it's going to suffer in quality. Well, tell that to, one of the best, highest quality TV series we've ever gotten. And I'm talking about House of the Dragon, not Game of Thrones.
Okay, but that is, I'm a little on the fence about that because I don't know if that's the best example. It's lightning in a bottle. If you take a look at everything that gets made in Europe on a complete total scale, I'm not saying it's apples and oranges, but to say that you're going to get everything from European media that you're expecting from American media, I don't think that's a fair comparison. House of the Dragon is something that is completely set apart from everything else that we're used to, and I don't think we can expect all of our American industry films and TV shows and stuff to get outsourced and be as high quality as what we've come to expect from here in the States.
I'm certainly not suggesting that it's going to be as high quality as House of the Dragon. I'm simply saying when you look at how the studios have handled things, when you look at some of the shit that's come out of Bob Iger's mouth during this, that's a route that you could absolutely see them going. That does not mean that they're going to have the same level of success. If anything, I would bet against it, frankly.
Well, but at some point it comes down to the almighty dollar. That's what it always comes down to. And the cost of outsourcing and taking all of your production overseas and handling all of these other negotiations and the exchange rate and what the valuation is going to be at the box office. And, there's all of these different financial factors that you would have to consider. And let's be honest, movies like their live action Little Mermaid didn't do well. And that was before the strike. And so if they're trying to do a lot of their productions and a lot of their remakes and things like that, it's going to be a lot harder for them to see a profit get turned. And I think that's why they're choosing to negotiate, is because they have explored those options and they're realizing that their profit margins are going to be even smaller than if they try to meet the demands of what's currently being asked of them here in the States. So we get a comment here from Ty Nelson. You were muted there for a second. Are you okay if I read this off?
Yeah, no, definitely.
As AI becomes more credible, there will be more contention from producers to use it as a viable platform. Actors, artists, writers need to be looking at ways to copyright and trademark their work. Completely agree. Completely agree. Basically every project that I do, every meme that I make has my logo in there. Everything that I'm a part of that has me on camera, I've got my logo over my shoulder here. It looks like a hat, yes, but it has my logo. every meme that I make or every final graphic that I post or, everything that I do, I try to incorporate something that is like me so that there's something that's unmistakably my work. I completely get that, completely agree.
Is there anything else you wanted to touch on the WGA before we move on?
I just feel like it's a matter of time before they end up coming to terms with the actors as well, because a writer without an actor to bring their content to life is nothing. So this is half of it, and the other half, the other domino, should fall in the not too distant future. At least that's my hope, especially for my friends that are in the industry. I really hope that they're able to get back to work really soon.
No, absolutely. I don't want to put a timeline on things. I'm not going to say it's going to be a week or two, but one would think that it's sooner rather than later. One would hope that we're not talking about months passing between WGA getting their agreement and the actors getting theirs. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. We are going to get ready for our second topic of the evening. Again, if you haven't yet, please take a moment to like the stream. Helps us out a ton. Share your thoughts down below, whether it's on the WGA strike ending, on Miramax and Trancas. That's important. Miramax and Trancas fielding bids and pitches on the future of the Halloween franchise on multiple fronts, by the way, not just on one. Or is Thrawn going to be the big bad of Star Wars' Filoniverse, or whatever you want to call it, Mandoverse? If you have any thoughts on any of that, share them down in the comment section below. But we're getting ready for some Halloween, and we'll be back in just a moment. And we're back. So, big news dropped today. We had a report earlier in the year that stated that, that ACAD and Trancas and Miramax were taking pitches on what was next for the Halloween franchise. And Zach made me aware of the Bloody Disgusting article this morning, and Zach, as I pull it up on screen, feel free to take it away, man.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm just going to be reading off what's been reported. This is not any word of mouth. This isn't a rumor. This is from a pretty credible source. Says that the last Halloween season marked the release of Halloween Ends, the final film in a 3-film trilogy from director David Gordon Green. It was billed as the final, really this time, Between Laurie Strode and Michael Myers, Ends wrapped up not only Gordon Green's sequel trilogy, but also Universal and Blumhouse's time with the iconic horror franchise. The sequel trilogy was produced by Blumhouse and released into theaters by Universal as a part of a pact with Miramax, and the ball is now back in Miramax's court, the article says. So what's next for the Halloween franchise? Bloody Disgusting can exclusively report that Miramax is actively shopping the rights to the Halloween franchise around Hollywood. From what we understand, there's a massive bidding war going on right now with several parties interested and vying for the chance to bring Michael Myers back to life. Sources have also indicated that Miramax is open to film and television projects, and they're currently taking offers from studios and streamers alike. Everything is on the table at this time, and it's ultimately up to Miramax to field the pitches and decide what is most appealing to them in the wake of this sequel trilogy. Last year's Ends was the 13th installment in the franchise, which to date has never made its way onto the small screen. Could Michael Myers return with the television series, or is another feature film reboot up next on the menu? Only time will tell, it says. I have followed the new trilogy. I saw the original one in preparation for, the connections that it was going to take. But I'll be honest, man, the prospect of this series making it to the small screen is jarring for me, and I feel like it's probably even more jarring for the super hardcore fans that know a lot more about Michael Myers in this franchise than I do. I'm really curious if this is something that should be presented to streamers, or if this is the type of story or the type of franchise that is really best fitting for the big screen. Chat, let me know what you think. I saw a couple of comments that said maybe something animated, but I'm really not sure what to make of all this. I thought if it was going to get shopped at all, it would get shopped for maybe a new trilogy, but to be shopping it for big screen and small screen makes me feel like maybe they're a little desperate to get rid of the franchise. Am I interpreting this wrong?
Well, they don't just like outright sell the rights. They more rent the rights for a period of time to a studio to go out and make the films, and then they get the rights back. It's the way they've done things for so long. You actually you kind of answered your own question earlier in the show. It's about the almighty dollar. So
yeah, true.
When people talk about a movie or a TV series in terms of what's next for Halloween, the truth is it's going to be both. Like, I can tell you right now, it's going to be both. It's not going to be one or the other. It's going to be both. And the reason it's going to be both is because they're two different sets of rights, which means two different sets of profit that come in. Take Friday the 13th, for example. The TV rights were sold off. The movie rights were not. And again, they weren't permanently sold. So it's a chance for Trancas and Miramax, depending on who ends up buying it, to make a pretty penny here. I think there's an appetite for a TV series. Frankly, I think you're going to see a TV series before you see another movie when it comes to Halloween. I don't think that we're in a place where you're like, I know I've seen it so many comments already in our chat tonight about what if we do a sequel to this movie, or what if we go back and do a sequel to that movie? And the truth is, it's probably going to be something new and something different. A CAD will likely go with the highest bidder. At the same time, he's shown before, he's not just gonna let them go do whatever with the franchise. He's gonna want to hear the creative pitch behind it first. So I expect it not just to be one, but both a new movie and a new TV series. I'm not saying the two will be connected. I don't have the fella's website here, but I know Braden Timmons wrote an article on his new media site, and I forget who he sourced, but he said that a CAD was looking to do something in the Season of the Witch universe in terms of a TV series. And I've always said, if you go back and whether it's a sequel to Season of the Witch or a retelling of Season of the Witch, the way that story plays out it's a lot better to do that in like a 6 to 8 part series than it is let's try to condense this down into a 90-minute movie and make it make sense from start to finish. Like, we're not talking about when you look at Season of the Witch as a movie, that's not like just Haddonfield or anything being affected. That's a worldwide global thing that's going on, and the intent is to kill every child, or at least every child in America, in that movie. So it's actually a much bigger scale than the other Halloween movies in that regard. So I do think a story that continues from there could be done on the small screen, but make no mistake, I've seen people put it out there today. People are buying the rights to make a new Michael Myers movie. Nobody wants to go see, Saw, the Halloween version. Nobody wants to go see whatever, they want to go see Michael Myers. They want a continuation of Michael Myers. It's a slasher franchise at heart. And yeah, so I could go on forever, and I will continue, but just your thoughts in general, Zach, on the news that's come out today. And it sounds to me like you would rather a movie, but obviously there's multiple sides to this. Like, there's the financial side of it where they want to make their money, but there's a creative side of it too, because we've seen what can happen when creative liberties are taken with any franchise, and it's already happened with this one.
Yeah, it's very true. You're throwing a lot to me in one question that's super loaded. I'll start with just a brief commentary on my observations of consumers lately. The trend, in my estimation, has been leaning more in the direction of a TV series since Endgame. And the reason I say since Endgame is because people were willing to put up with a 3+ hour film that was supposed to bring closure to 10 years of films and storyline. But after that, I just seem to have noticed a great decline in people's interest to sit through a long movie like that. People's attention spans have dwindled just a bit. And it's getting to the point where I truly think there's just more interest in a TV series because you don't have to watch as much in one sitting. People have a lot of different media they're trying to consume. They have a lot of different things that they're trying to watch. And it's easier to watch a 45-minute installment once a week than it is to carve out 3 hours to, hire a babysitter or, make your way across town, have a night out, if you will, to see whatever it is that you're super interested in. In my case, it could be superheroes, or it could be mystery, a thriller, slasher, whatever it may be. I just personally feel like people's attention spans have dwindled a bit in the last couple of years. And producers tend to follow the money where people's attention spans are. Look at how many different creatives have sponsors on TikTok, because 30 seconds, 60 seconds from the right video, from the right creative, is more than enough to bring in your revenue from what you paid that creative in advertising. And so I think the money for this franchise could be found on the small screen. But I'm with you that I think when it comes to Michael Myers, that franchise is best serviced on the big screen. I think people will enjoy Michael Myers on the small screen, but I think if anything makes it to the big screen, it has to involve Michael. It has to involve Michael. If it is anything but that, it's not going to make the money. And so you could do a Season of the Witch storyline on a streamer, but you couldn't do one on the big screen. So if it is a yes and, then Michael has to be on the big screen. But I think a lot of the money and the interest and the viewership could end up on a streamer.
Yeah, I just think there's so much money being thrown around from from streaming services that like, don't be shocked when a Halloween TV series gets picked up by a Prime or a Netflix or a Peacock or whatever. Hopefully not Peacock, but there's just so much money out there that gets thrown at new content. There's so much money out there that gets thrown at old content, let alone new content, that it's going to happen. And keep in mind, like, it's not like, okay, like, I've seen this confusion out there today too. It's not like, okay, the writer strike's over, so now we can start listening to pitches again. Pitches absolutely were happening prior to the strike. Pitches from other studios, at least getting the rights to it, could have been happening during the strike. All that stuff could happen then. In fact, if you go back, this is how long ago this dates back to. If you go back to almost 1 year from today, about 11 months, and you listen to the orange carpet interviews with David Gordon Green, he spills not once, but twice that Malaka Cad is already moved on to the next thing and working on that. Not in terms of like they're crafting the story or whatever, but they're already taking pitches all the way back then, before Ends was even out publicly for a week. So, and you can find those interviews on YouTube. So they tipped their hand. Well, I shouldn't say they tipped their hand. David Gordon Green tipped their hand. But some other important things to remember is the box office. Like, if you're not Barbie or Oppenheimer or a Mario, there's a lot of box office failures this year, like more than we've seen in a long time. And when a franchise begins to have diminishing returns, and make no mistake about it, while Halloween Ends was successful at the box office, its returns greatly diminished from Halloween Kills, and even more so from Halloween 2018. And I can almost guarantee you that regardless of what they do next, it will probably not make the amount of money that Halloween Ends made, which means then you get to deal with how much money do you put into the movie and what way do you go about things. And that's where TV and streaming becomes a little bit more of a attractive options, because it can be a cheaper option at times. Sorry, go ahead, Zach.
No, I was actually going to try to highlight some of the thoughts that our friend Ty has had in the chat, and I think a lot of what he's got is spot on, starting with his thought on this being a post-COVID era. When there was a lockdown, people had to invest in better TVs and better sound systems and just enjoyed watching movies from home so much that there's a lot of comfort attached to seeing stuff at home. So, unless the industry can find a way to revitalize the atmosphere of going to the movies, then yeah, there's definitely going to be a lot more draw to seeing stuff at home, as opposed to the hassle, as Ty puts it. But then I think he also says that there was a great resurgence with Barbenheimer. This was a great summer for those two films and for getting people to dress up and go back out to the movies again. People were wearing pink. People were wearing trench coats. People were buying the memorabilia. They were talking about it. They were doing double features. However it was marketed super well and led to a great resurgence. But there is definitely going to be a test at the box office this winter to see if this is something that is going to be consistent, or if that was a blip on the radar. Was it a really great thing for movies to have those two on the same weekend, or are we going to have an issue moving forward where we have an Expendables 4 situation for almost every other movie that comes out for the rest of the year?
Yeah, I think, look, Halloween is not Marvel. Halloween's not DC or Star Wars or a Christopher Nolan movie. And that's one thing I want to point out with the Barbenheimer thing is you had Barbie, which people were clamoring for decades, not a few years, decades. And you had Christopher Nolan, who's widely regarded as one of, if not the best big spectacle filmmaker there is currently. So it's not like they're just two average, movies or even two normal, if you will, blockbusters. These were, this felt more like lightning in a bottle to me. I'm not saying it can't be replicate it or close to it, but I think there's a lot bigger chance at Expendables 4 happening, like Dean points out, than there is at seeing Barbenheimer Part 2, which I haven't seen either of those, but I believe you have, and you like them both.
I saw both that opening weekend. I was part of the craze. Saw them in 2 different cinemas. It was a fantastic experience taking in the atmosphere in both places. And it was something that we ended up talking about over on the IPC podcast. My wife actually joined me because it was the both of us that went to go see it, and one of the rare times I actually get her in front of a microphone to talk. And so it was really cool getting to talk about our experiences, talk about the movies and what they meant. But then I gotta tell you, dude, like we went to the drive-in over this past weekend, which that is a severely underrated method of taking in cinema. Is just tuning to an old FM frequency and watching a movie under the stars. It's a super cool thing to do. But there were 9 screens at that drive-in, and I think they were playing like 6 or 7 different films, and hardly any of them were very occupied. And it was just kind of a sad state to see that there's a lot of movies out there, and hardly anybody is like actually going to watch them right now. So I'm with Ty that this fall, this winter slate, the Thanksgiving, Christmas slate of films is going to be like the real test, because you had great success over the summer, but can that success be sustained? And I think that the powers that be that are bidding on the Halloween franchise are watching those numbers. They're watching those metrics, and they're taking notes to see where the money is. And if the money is on a streamer, that's where this franchise is going to end up. I guarantee it.
Yeah, I would, I'm not saying I have any inside knowledge on this particular thing, but if I had to put a bet on it, like, don't be shocked if Prime comes out with the streaming rights for Halloween. There are some creatives over with Prime that would love to get their hands on it. And while Mike Flanagan couldn't figure out how to make his Michael Myers movie, he really wanted to. He's a huge Halloween guy. You can bet your ass that something in the Season of the Witch universe for a 6-part or 8-part limited series falls right in Mike Flanagan's wheelhouse. Which, by the way, he has the fall of the House of Usher coming out soon. There's been some clips of that coming out. Mark Hamill's in it. It looks pretty good.
I've heard good things about it. IGN gave it a 10 out of 10.
10 out of 10, yeah. I was like, wow. You guys shit on Star Wars weekly, but this thing gets 10 out of 10.
Oh man, I'm not going there. But yeah.
Dean says
Dean's got a good point. Look at how much money they spent on that Lord of the Rings show. And there was a metric that came out not too long ago that said, like, of the people that started that series, only like 30% of them saw it all the way through to the end. So it had like millions, tens of millions of views the first couple of episodes because of all the hype and the advertising surrounding it. But when it came down to actually seeing it through to the end, 70% dropped off. That's just...
Didn't they have a multi-episode release too to begin with? Which
I think it was like a 2-episode release, 2 or 3 episode, yeah. And it still didn't do enough.
Wow,
to keep people.
That's just insane. Yeah, I mean, in terms of a movie, though, they got to be smart here. Whether you are a fan of Halloween Ends or not, I think you need to step back and realize that the majority of the fan base really did not like Halloween Ends. It's more in the side of we really didn't like this than it is down the middle or we loved it. But the other thing that's important to remember here, though, as much as they'd like to do some things for diehards, in terms of box office, you need to be able to appeal to, frankly, you need to be able to appeal to Zach and his wife here. Zach's not a diehard Halloween guy. And what are you going to do to get their money? What are you going to do to get their butts in the seats to go see a new Halloween movie in theaters? It's as much as I think a lot of diehard fans for any of your favorite fandoms want to any of your favorite fandoms, and just diehard fans, I think they think that it just needs to appeal to them, and we're seeing a little bit of that with Star Wars Ahsoka, which is getting some deep dives into things that, frankly, I can guarantee you, if some casual viewers that I know watch this thing, I haven't talked to them, but they're not going to follow certain parts of it. And whenever
my wife isn't, like, bless her heart, she's watching along with me, but she asks a ton of questions that I am happy to answer because I grew up on this stuff. But there's a lot of subtext and a lot of between the lines and a lot of context from the Clone Wars and Rebels that you kind of have to have in order to keep up with it. And when I look at something like a slasher franchise like Halloween, if you do too many of those deep cuts and too many references to like the fifth movie that was out 20 years ago that, you know, you really have to be super into the franchise in order to get that reference. If it's those kinds of references that are happening throughout the duration of the film, then yeah, somebody like me could end up losing interest because I just want to see people get stabbed.
No, you're right. Like, that's it. I know people aren't going to want to hear this. Like, I'm a huge Halloween 4 fan. I think it's the best movie they've ever made. And it's my favorite, too. And I would love to see a continuation of that movie. But the chances are it's never going to happen in a feature film that goes to movie theaters. It's just not. I'd be stunned. The other thing that's probably not going to happen is some people might want to see a reboot again, which would be the third time, of the Laurie Strode story. And I can tell you that that's probably not going to happen either. What Zach just said makes the most sense. Is when you look at whether you're a Scream fan or not, if you went to see Scream 6, which was set in New York, you could have went and seen that movie and not really have seen the other movies and still enjoyed the movie. And that's their goal. They're going to go out and they're going to make a Halloween movie that there might be some stuff in the movie that if you're a diehard, you go, oh, that's amazing. That's awesome. But at the end of the day, it needs to not take the average moviegoer out of the movie. It's got to be something that's not super important to the overall story, because at the end of the day, they want to release a Halloween movie close to Halloween with Michael Myers killing people. So don't be surprised if the next Halloween movie has nothing to do with any of your favorite Halloween movies, other than the fact you have Michael Myers in his coveralls and his white mask. Probably going to look a little different too, mind you. It's not going to be a carbon copy of his original mask again, and it's not going to be a carbon copy of what you've seen in this past trilogy. It's going to appeal to an everyday fan base, while, you know, giving some nuggets to the diehards. And I think, Zach, that not just for Halloween fans, but I think a lot of fans and a lot of fandoms have a hard time dealing with that. Like, tell me right now that that the diehards for Marvel aren't struggling with some of the content that's coming out there right now.
I mean, yeah, I think it's for any franchise, man. Like, I really do. Like, the diehards for Star Wars are having fun with Ahsoka, while the casuals are saying it's their least favorite. Their favorite is Mandalorian. And why is that? Because first 2 seasons of Mando, you didn't really need any context of anything else from Star Wars. It's just a man in a metal suit and a cute-ass baby going on adventures together. That's all you need. And if you throw in some Clone Wars references, if you throw in some Mandalorian heritage, then cool, Star Wars fans are going to enjoy that. But, you know, I see our friend Matt in the chat saying that I don't want to just see people get stabbed. I don't want just Michael. I want to follow a group of survivors who fight back. That's all well and good, dude, and I agree with you to a certain extent. I followed the franchise enough that, you know, in the second one of the new movies, there was a sequence of people trying to fight back, and it was interesting, it was intriguing, but at the same time, you have to earn that. You kind of have to earn the group of survivors who fight back, and if it's a trilogy, then sure, you'll be able to build up enough time where you can follow enough people who you can follow along and get attached to and see them try to fight back. But if we're just doing a few standalone movies, then it's going to be more of a mass appeal because that's where the profits are. Unless here's the deal, and I'm probably going to piss off some people, and you might lose some subscribers over this, Sean. I'm sorry. Unless you diehards are willing to pay $50 a ticket for all of your references, you're going to have to suck it up and deal with it that people are just going to get stabbed with a few subtle undertones meant to appease you. If all you want is like a super in-depth story, then you're going to have to pay for the film's profit margins because I'm not. The casual viewers are not. So unless you are willing to pay for extortionate ticket prices, suck it up and deal with what they give you.
Let me back Zach's point up here. And by all means, hey, if anyone wants to unsubscribe for hearing the truth, go ahead. Halloween has, just take a guess, Zach. How many $100 million films does Halloween have in terms of money made, box office? There's been 13.
You're talking profit margins, not profits, right? Not budget.
Just the overall box office that came in. How many
overall box office out of all the ones they've made? I'm pretty sure only the new ones did it. I'm going to say 2 out of the 3.
All 3 new ones did.
Okay.
And that's it. Ever. Period. And one, inflation's a thing, people. The cost of a movie ticket has gone up a lot over the last 5 years compared to the previous 10 or 15. As my cat tries to kill me, it's probably going to kill my green screen here. But on top of that,
you mean you don't play the piano and have a nice, warm, comfy hearth that you're doing your show from?
Totally. I can totally afford all that. I'd be sitting at the piano right now, doing my best Axl Rose impression and fumbling it horribly. Look, Halloween 2018 was not expected to make $250 million. It wasn't. It just kind of happened. I believe, maybe I'm getting my number wrong. I think that's what it was. I don't know if you can check that up, Zach. I think it was 252. I don't think it was 152. Pretty sure it was 252, but I might be wrong on that. It's been so long since I've looked at it. The point being is it was a $10 million film. You don't make $10 million films. That doesn't include marketing, obviously. Dude. Yeah.
255.
255. Okay. They didn't go into that movie. Blumhouse didn't pick that up thinking, okay, well, we're going to make $255 million off this $10 million film. They knew it was going to make some money because they were making it for cheap, and that's what Blumhouse is good at. When you look at, I forget what the opening weekend box office projections were before it came out, but people had it at like 45 or 50, and it ended up doing like 80 something. And, or maybe it was 78. It was close to 80 anyway. And so when you have a big opening weekend like that, and that's just North America, by the way, it changed everything. Like, don't get me wrong. There were thoughts about them doing 2 movies right off the bat. You've heard the stories from David Gordon Green and Danny McBride. But at the end of the day, Blumhouse and Universal settled for 1 film. If they were all set to do 2 or 3 films, it wouldn't have been, obviously the pandemic happened and Kills got delayed a year. But if they were set with their idea from the get-go, there's no way that you don't have that movie ready for 2019, the year after Halloween 2018 comes out. You absolutely have it ready for then. It's a horror movie. The turnarounds are quick on these things. But they didn't. They had to go back and negotiate the rights for 2 more movies and then create them. And then the pandemic happened and it slowed everything down. So Zach is right. Like, at the end of the day, you can sit here and hope for a new trilogy or a series of 5 films. But the truth is, whatever deal gets done, and the deal might have some options on it. Whoever's getting it would be smart to put some options on it, not just have it one outright. But the total deal or the principal deal at the beginning is probably going to be for one film, and it's probably going to be made for not very much money, and they're going to see how it does. Maybe there's some relatable characters outside of Michael Myers that you go, oh, well, these two people survived, and I really like this person's portrayal of this new character, and I want to see what they do next. And whatever the creative direction ends up being, the first film needs to be successful before the other films get made, or it's right back to the drawing board. And let me tell you, this franchise has a horrible track record of being able to put together multiple good box office producing films until these last three. Say what you want about Kills and Ends. I'm not a fan of Ends, but they still succeeded at the box office. There's going to be a lot of people taking the other side of that bet going, yeah, I don't think you're going to make $100 million off another Halloween movie. I know I wouldn't bet on it.
Yeah, it's not right now. It's not a safe bet because of how divisive Ends was. And there's a lot of diehards that are still upset over it, that are saddened by it to a certain extent. And so there's some trust issues, if you want to put it that way, as far as what's going to happen next to this franchise, as far as what's going to happen for my enjoyment level. And that's why they're going to make it for cheap. That's why it's only going to have that one movie, is because whoever produces this next installment has to win back the hearts of the diehards while also appealing to the casual viewers. And that's a tall order, especially on a low budget. So it'll be really interesting to see how it all plays out, because that's a tall order for any film, any franchise, anything that you're trying to produce that has a deep-rooted history of 13 plus films that goes back decades. Like, even Star Wars doesn't have that many films. And so you're taking a lot of context, a lot of history, a lot of fans that have been built, and you got to make them happy, but you've also got to make it slasher enough that people just want to go to see people get stabbed. And striking that balance isn't something that just any creative or any studio is going to be able to accomplish. So it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out.
Yeah, no, I think you nailed it, man. At the end of the day, you got to appeal to the everyday moviegoer. That's who's gonna, if they want to make $100 million or whatever it's gonna be, you can't just rely on your diehard fan base unless you want to do what Zach said and pay $50 a ticket. Then maybe, but I don't foresee that happening. And yeah, I do think that there's some trust issues going on right now with the fan base and the creative direction that happened with Halloween Ends. And I wish I could sit here and say that you don't have to have those, but we don't know who's gonna get it. I seen someone in the chat earlier. It's too far back for me to scroll up now. Had mentioned the possibility of at least one set of the rights possibly being announced at the 45-year Halloween anniversary convention. It would all depend how far along they are in the process. If they get something signed, sealed, and delivered prior to that, it would be a wonderful place to announce it at. It would be huge. We've seen how many times has Star Wars done something big at one of their conventions. It would be awesome for everybody that's in attendance. I just don't see it happening unless there's something that's 100% official, because the ACADs have a history of putting their foot in their mouths at conventions and not being able to deliver. And this dates back decades, literally. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. But share your thoughts down below. What do you want to see in the next Halloween movie and or TV series? And I hate to keep breaking the bad news here, but I think for the diehards, you could have been pitched a new Halloween film with Josh Hartnett as the character from Halloween H2O, but not a direct sequel. And if you've seen H2O, great. But if you haven't, it could have stood on its own. Well, guess what? Josh Hartnett sounds like he's about to get paid a lot of money to go join the MCU in a very big Fantastic Four role moving forward. So I would suggest the odds of getting Josh Hartnett back to do any of that are very, very slim now. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. But I do think you should be prepared for, just Bob and Gina from wherever, and their group of friends, wrong place, wrong time, as Michael Myers is out on Halloween night. And no one's saying that can't be a good movie. It could be a fantastic movie. It's all about the execution and the writing, which is a good thing that the strike is over. So
you've got writers who can actually get to writing now. So yeah, let's see what they can cook up.
Absolutely. We're going to have more on the Halloween news as the week goes on. It'll be a topic that we touch on this show tomorrow night for sure. And actually, I don't know if we're live tomorrow, simply because Ahsoka's on tomorrow and we have a review of that right after. So just stay tuned for that. But we're going to transition into our third and final topic of the evening. And this one won't be nearly as long. But before we do, please like, comment, subscribe, slash that bell. If you want to support the channel, you can do so over on Patreon, patreon.com/Fandom Empire, or you can send in a super chat and support in that way, or you can just, click the like button for free. It helps us out. Zach, a lot of talk going on about Grand Admiral Thrawn's debut. Before we dive into, is he the big bad, which everybody seems to be jumping to the conclusion he is. What were your thoughts on the live action debut of Thrawn? Now that you're safe, of course.
Yeah, I'm finally safe. I was dangerous there for a little while.
When you put that in the chat, inside joke that nobody's going to get, but when you put that in the chat, it's like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Well, everybody else was saying, I'm safe. And I was like, well, I haven't seen it yet. I'm fucking dangerous right now. So it took me a couple of days to get around to seeing it. Just life happens, gets in the way. But I have been a fan of Thrawn since the books. I read the Heir to the Empire trilogy back in the 2000s when I was trying to find stuff. It was post 2005 and pre 2015, that decade where we weren't sure if we were getting any more movies, and I dove heavy into the books. And I read that, and then I read this other one called Outbound Flight, which was like a prequel book that had Thrawn in it. Really good book. One of Timothy Zahn's best works, in my opinion. And so when it was announced that he was going to be in Rebels, I was intrigued because I had never actually brought his voice to life. And Mikkelsen did that. Mikkelsen brought Thrawn to life in the animated series, and now to bring him to life in live action was fascinating. I won't call it thrilling. I won't call it invigorating. I won't call it perfection. I think maybe a couple of the memes are somewhat justifiable, but as a whole, I liked the premise. I like where it's going. I liked his Star Destroyer. I forget the name off the top of my head, but the fact that it was in disarray, the fact that it was broken, the fact that it's not up to Imperial quality. It was interesting to me to see how he makes the most of it. And yes, Ty, I know it came out in the early 90s. I was born in the early 90s, so I didn't read it for another decade and a half. Thank you for enlightening me on the subject that I already know about. But the Chimera was just broken and fallen apart. And to see him trying to preserve the Empire as best he could was really, really fascinating to me. And so I like that he's in live action. I am intrigued by what's going to happen next, but I also think that I had a tough time telling whether he was painted blue or if it was just a blue CGI filter they put over his face. Like it could that part probably could have been done a little better, but at that point I'm kind of nitpicking.
I think lighting plays a big part in it. I believe he was painted blue, and I do believe that he has these very unique contact lenses in as well. I forget where I heard it, but they're Dave Filoni was talking about
Kind of like those Anakin Skywalker yellows from Revenge of the Sith.
yeah, but I do believe there's some CG involved in his appearance. But no, it's not just Lars stepping up and looking like Lars in the scene. Not that you suggest that, but I have seen other people suggest that. But if you take frames of episode 6 beside one another, like you would swear he's painted 2 different colors of blue at times. But I just think lighting plays such a key factor in that, and it can, like we just finished talking about Halloween, where lighting with Michael Myers is so integral to how the character looks in those films.
Yep.
Thrawn's the same way. Like I thought Thrawn looked better when he was inside, and whenever he was outside, where the daylight was very much more visible, obviously, I didn't think he looked as good. But I loved the performance. To me, there's no better casting than him, and everybody that's fat shaming the 60-year-old guy can, go fucking run into a brick wall for all I care. Just utterly ridiculous, the shit that still goes on. But that's social media and the cesspool that it is. You and I, Zach, years ago, I don't know if you remember this, and we have not talked about this prior to this moment right now, did a episode on our old network, channel 1138, of Star Wars Wastelands. And towards the end of it, it was supposed to be like a 2-hour thing that had turned into like almost this 4-hour show. It wasn't just you and I.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, we were just theorizing about, well, how could the sequel trilogy end, and what if it didn't end with a definitive ending? What if the Vong showed up, or what if Thrawn showed up, and that was the adventure. And
I remember that.
A lot of people, pumping out there that Thrawn's the big bad, because that's just the only thing they know him as. Because a lot of people go back to Heir to the Empire. But the truth is, to get the full picture of Thrawn, even back in Legends, it was more than Heir to the Empire. Outbound Flight, as Zach mentioned, came into play. Survivor's Quest came into play, and frankly, it all led up to the New Jedi Order series. Thrawn's goal back then, he was still more in line with the Chiss than he was the Emperor. Mm-hmm. And the threat they were worried about was the Yuuzhan Vong. Yep. Do you think there's something more at play here? To me, I think it's clear as day what's going on. But do you think there's something more at play here? Or do you think it's as simple as it's Thrawn's going to be the big bad, and they'll just tease some other stuff, and they're just going to stick with Thrawn as the big bad? I think there's people that would not argue, but would say in Disney Star Wars, they're not creative enough to do something more than that. But then you remember it's Dave Filoni, and I don't think that you can throw him in the same basket as some of the other creatives that have had their hand in it. So what do you think is going on here, man?
Well, in another group chat that you and I are part of, I recently said that Filoni was basically George Lucas's apprentice. He studied under Lucas during the time of the Clone Wars animated show. And he learned from the maker himself. And so as far as the mirroring goes, as far as the storytelling goes, as far as being able to make everything coherent and poetic, have it rhyme the way Lucas makes it do, I don't think there's anybody better suited for that than Dave Filoni. And I do think that he's got more at play. And I also think that Thrawn is too dynamic of a character to be pegged as just a villain. I think he is more than that. I think he was always a visionary. I think he was always trying to figure out how to make the galaxy a better and safer place. And for a time, that was with the Chiss. For a time, that was with the Empire. And it may be something completely different now that he's aligned himself with the Night Sisters. And I really don't want to speculate too terribly much where things are going, because we're recording this live a day before we see more Thrawn. You know, I'm trying hard not to like put my foot in my mouth like 24 hours beforehand, because we may get more answers in this next episode. And so I do think I see where you're going with this. You're talking about the Grisk, right?
I truthfully don't know anymore.
I think the Grisk could be at play, because there haven't been a whole lot of ties and connections to the High Republic just yet. I do think the Acolyte will probably bridge that gap a little bit whenever it finally gets finished, but there hasn't been a whole lot of ties to the High Republic yet. And if there was anybody that could tie the new streaming content to the books that are set 100 years before anything else, it would be Dave Filoni. I think Filoni would be probably the only creative in that studio that could pull that off. And it's very possible that the feature-length film that we get could be our Rebels characters, our Mando characters, our Boba Fett characters, you know, whatever remnants of the rebellion that we can throw together, and the Chimera joining forces to fight off an even bigger threat to the Republic in the form of the Grisk. And that would be a really interesting, really compelling story, the enemy of my enemy is my friend type of situation. And it would be different. It's unlike anything we've seen in Star Wars, honestly, aside from when Bo-Katan helped Obi-Wan in the Siege of Mandalore. She used that phrase, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. But that's pretty much the only instance we've ever had from it. So I would definitely be on board if that's the direction they're going. But I also would not be surprised if Thrawn's ultimate goal is to make it back to his galaxy, stab the Night Sisters in the back, metaphorically and or physically, and try to reassert his control over the Empire to help feed into the narrative of the new trilogy. Thrawn could also very much be the person that spawns the First Order. Just as much as he could be somebody that helps fight the Grisk, he could also be setting the table for what the First Order eventually becomes. So it could go either way, and as long as it's done tactfully and done well, I think I'd be on board for either.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. I mean, I'll be blunt. I don't know the spoilers from this point on, and all the spoilers that I know have come and gone in the first 6 episodes. So, but to me, as a viewer and a consumer, I look at what is happening on screen, and you do have to look at a little bit of the Legends content and even the current content, because they are pulling from things that are in current canon. And they did with Kenobi in terms of Jedi Fallen Order, and hell, there are connections in Jedi Survivor that appeared in the last episode of Star Wars Ahsoka. So I won't say what they are because I don't want to spoil anybody here in case it goes somewhere. But they're pulling from multiple areas now, where in the past they weren't really doing that. They were hiring a creative, and he was coming in and doing his own idea and really just didn't give a shit about anything else that was going on. And that's not pointing the finger at anybody in particular. That's just how a lot of them do it. They don't want to have to, adhere to the, what's happening in this book or that book or this video game. So when I look at Star Wars Ahsoka, I look at Balin and things that he said in this series, like a higher calling, or the greater good, or the enemy of my enemy is my friend for now. And like Balin is, to me anyways, is very clearly telling you that there is something that is not Thrawn that is here and is worse. And Thrawn also mentioned their numbers have dwindled since being out there. I I don't think it's any question. I think there is another bigger, powerful entity of some sort. I used to be convinced it was definitely the Grisk. Now I'm less sure of that. But I do think this is all going to come down to, now whether Thrawn lives to that point or not, I have no idea. But I do think this is leading to whatever happens in that Filoni movie is going to have is going to be this unknown that Balin's talking about. I don't think we're going to get clear answers in the next 2 episodes about what Balin's referring to.
No, I think it's meant to set up for other things. I think this show, as brilliant as it's been on its own in instances, I do think it's also meant to serve a higher purpose, which is to set things up for the film, to set things up for other seasons of other shows. I wouldn't necessarily call this a filler show, though. Like, there are plenty of other instances where something could be considered a filler, but I don't necessarily see this show as being that. But I do see it as a continuation of a much bigger storyline that has taken place since Mando season 2, I would estimate. And you take a look at what Moff Gideon is doing with the cloning process. That ties into being able to clone the Emperor on Exegol. So I do think that there are some instances where it's supposed to tie into the new trilogy, but I think there's also plenty of wiggle room for it to incorporate another, I wouldn't call it a big bad, because I don't think it's going to be one big bad person. I don't think it's going to be Thrawn trying to outmaneuver some other individual. I think it's going to be a very Avengers style thing where we're bringing in Boba Fett, we're bringing in Fennec Shand, we're bringing in Mando, we're bringing in Ahsoka and the crew of the Ghost, and we're calling in as many different favors from these different TV franchises as we can, and they're all going to be in this movie, and they're all going to be facing some imminent threat, imminent danger. And Ahsoka is just one of those threads that's going to tie together and tie up all those loose ends in a feature film.
Ty says, I don't know any inside scoop, but from a production standpoint, the show/series will need/want a frontman. If that makes Thrawn the big bad, I don't know, but he seems like the face of the future. Very much like they used Vader for publicity for Revenge of the Sith, even though Vader's suit wasn't seen till the end. Thrawn, or quite possibly the Chiss, seems to be the direction they're going. I think the Chiss are definitely going to play a part in this as well, although they're not bad either in current canon. Zach, you might appreciate this reference, or you might disagree with it completely. I think Thrawn is to this current Star Wars story what Barbossa was to the first 3 Pirates movies.
I don't think you're wrong. I don't think you're wrong. He was originally seen as a bad guy, and then he ended up becoming an ally. And he was just a very charismatic character. I love the Pirates franchise. I love that analogy, by the way. And I love Barbossa. I love Jeffrey Rush. I definitely see Thrawn having that dynamic personality that makes you question which side he's really on. And if you read the books and if you understand the context of the character, he's on his own side at the end of the day. He's at the side that helps him survive and succeed. And if he stands a better chance of joining the Chimera and the Night Sisters with the crew of the Ghost in order to defeat this big bad foe, then yeah, he's going to do it because that's his greatest chance of succeeding. And then when that is over, who knows what could happen next. So I don't think he's the type of wild card that you would get from somebody like Hondo Ohnaka, but I do think he's kind of a badass wild card that any given episode, any given movie, any given appearance, you can't really predict what his next move is going to be because that move is still unraveling.
I completely agree. One last thing I wanted to touch on before we go. You and I used to like to talk about the possibility of the Yuuzhan Vong coming in, and currently they're not canon. Not to say that they couldn't be, but I will say this: I've had some time.
If they make the Vong canon in this show, I'm gonna lose my shit.
I don't think I want them to, and here's why. For the first time in nearly 20 years, I've sat down and I didn't read, but I listened to the audiobook, the unabridged audiobook of Vector Prime, the first New Jedi Order book, where the Vong really laid their groundwork. Chewie dies in it.
R.A. Salvatore, hell of a writer, man. If you've read any of his other works, like, it's just as dark. It's just as gritty.
It's fucking horror, man. Like, let's be real here. It's horror.
It gave me nightmares. First read through. Yeah.
There are Jedi who get eaten alive, literally, and others that get tortured physically, then mentally and spiritually, and then eaten alive. So I sit here and like, that is what I'd want out of the Vong, seeing them on screen. And there is no way you're convincing me that Disney is ever signing off on Star Wars being able to go that dark. Hell, there's no way you would convince me the current head of Lucasfilm would sign off on Star Wars going that dark, and it wouldn't matter who the head is, because I don't think Disney would. So for those reasons alone, I don't think there's any chance it's going to be the Vong. I will say this though, boy, I had forgotten how dark those books were. So as I was listening to that first one, I was just like, holy fuck, like, you know, this is darker than some Halloween shit I've read.
Yeah. And that's part of what I loved about that franchise, and what I loved about the Vong was they were a legitimate threat to the galaxy. They fucking took over Coruscant. Like, they were on the verge of unraveling and destroying everything that had ever been built in that galaxy. And I was like, oh my god, I get why the Emperor built the Death Star now. You needed it to be able to take it into battle against these guys. Like, everything made so much sense. And yet so many people also say, yeah, no, that doesn't belong in Star Wars. And so it's a very duplicitous entity. And I also don't think that it would ever make it into today's Star Wars, but I do think a version of them could be in there. I think a type of alien creature that we've never seen before, that thrives on religious victory and drives in organic spacefaring travel, uses organic weaponry. I think there are certain components of the Vong that can be incorporated, even if they don't call them the Vong outright. And so I feel like there are certain elements of that are incorporated in the Grysk, which is why I feel like they could show up. But like I said, if they go the Grysk / Vong direction, okay, just do it right. If they're going in the direction of Thrawn being the quote-unquote heir to the Empire and ends up, creating and revitalizing the First Order, then I'm on board with that too. Just do it right.
Well, I think that is going to do it for the first That Fandom Show episode. Big thanks to all you that came out tonight. It's really appreciated. Let us know in the comment section down below, if you could only pick one, what are you picking? A Halloween movie or a TV series? What do you think about the writer's strike, at least tentatively being over, with an agreement in place but not yet ratified? And is Thrawn the big bad? Let us know in the comment section down below. Zach, what do you got going on in your neck of the woods, man?
We're going to be doing an in-depth Ahsoka review on the IPC podcast early October, so be on the lookout for that. And then I am doing a lot of play-by-play for a local high school football team. So if you're into sports and you want to hear me talk about sports and try to do my best Joe Buck impression, then follow me at my socials and listen to me do some broadcasting outside of podcasting. But other than that, just whenever I'm able to pop into the channel here, doing Legacy of Westeros, doing that Fandom Show, doing Flixbusters, juggling a lot of plates while trying to live that married life, but I'm enjoying every minute of it.
Yeah, you can catch us the rest of the week here more than likely. I don't know what the show will be tomorrow. Probably know tomorrow morning what's going on, so be on the lookout for that. I can guarantee you, whatever show comes on tomorrow, it's not going to be till either 8 p.m. or 10 p.m. Eastern time, and then we'll definitely be back on Wednesday and Thursday. More of the Halloween stuff. I've seen the Paramount stuff out there. I'm not sure how legitimate that is, but a lot of misinformation out there that I'm looking forward to clearing up tomorrow too. A lot of people attaching the wrong names to who's involved with Miramax these days, but stay tuned. It was a fun show. Zach, appreciate you doing this, man. Definitely check out IPZ and the other things Zach's got going on. Follow him on social media. Follow us on social media, X or whatever it's called, Facebook, Instagram, at Fandom Empire Now. If you want to support the channel on another level, patreon.com/Fandom Empire. Have a great fucking night, and don't take anything for granted, and live life to the fullest. Good night.